Introducing a lineup of international award-winning and talented indie authors, only on the Writer's Corner live show.
Donna Conrad is more than an author. She's a story maestro. From reliving the 60s and House of the Moon to the eagerly awaited Last Magdalene, her stories are an electrifying plunge into history and empowerment. In today's episode on the Writer's Corner live show, don't go away. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the Writer's Corner live show, the weekly water cooler for authors and readers. Join us for 30 minutes of insightful conversation with some of the biggest names in the industry. We feature award-winning authors, New York Times and USA Today bestsellers, and even international indie sensations. Tune in and join our family-friendly community only on the Writer's Corner live show.
If you are just joining us, welcome to the Writer's Corner live show. If you're not following us, make sure you do so you can get notified the next time we go live. I'm Mary Elizabeth Jackson, and I'm an author. I live near Nashville, Tennessee in the USA. In today's show, we're going to talk to Donna Conrad. Our live stream is made possible by Creative Edge and Be Live Media. Our guest today is Donna Conrad. She's an award-winning author, journalist, activist, and educator. So she wears many hats. She is passionate about individual empowerment, and it shows in her writing style. Now, Donna is a regular presenter at writers' conferences. Her book, House of the Moon, Surviving the 60s, is a memoir that explores life in the tumultuous decade that changed the world. Book one, The Last Magdalene, of her four-book historical fiction, this historical fiction series releases in early 2024. So, okay, Donna, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for inviting me to be on.
We're so happy that you're here. And so, let's just jump right in. Your core values emphasize individual empowerment, a theme that's woven throughout your books. Can you share a specific moment or experience that profoundly influenced your belief in the power of personal empowerment? And that's a big question, isn't it?
It's quite a big question. And I would have to go back to my early 20s, because coming out of the 60s, I had pretty much done a nosedive and was into drugs and all of this and didn't know couldn't find my way out. And I have to give it up to a high school English teacher. Teachers are remarkable. And he believed in me. And from his belief, I started to believe in myself. And I started to realize that I was the person that could take control of my life, of my destiny in a way, and that it really was up to me. It's to each individual to say, I can overcome this or I can succumb to it. And so at that point, I began my journey to say, this is my life. I need to live it however I can to the best advantage. And that was personal empowerment, taking back the power, not giving it away to society or to a particular group of people, saying, no, this is my life and I'm responsible for it. So I think personal empowerment also goes back to personal responsibility for your actions, for your thoughts.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's as prevalent back then as it is today, maybe even more so with all that we're going through, wouldn't you agree?
I absolutely, and I see so many correlations between our time, the divisiveness in the world, and especially in the United States, as going back to the 60s. And people have said right now is the most divisive our country has ever been. I have to disagree. In the 60s, I think it's even up a notch from what it is now. And I would like to see people stop, take a step back and say, do we really have to be this angry and this contentious with each other? It's not necessary and it's not helpful and it doesn't get anything productive done,
And
in
that's the
my
key.
humble opinion.
Well, that's the key right there. Nothing productive is getting done. But as a presenter at writers' conferences, which I know that's exciting, what's one unique piece of advice that you give to aspiring authors that you believe sets your approach apart from conventional writing wisdom?
Oh my goodness. I teach a class called Writing Real, Writing Raw.
Oh,
And
nice.
that to me, I think it is important for an author. I'm not sure. It's been attributed to many people who said writing is easy. You just sit at your desk and open a vein. and, and to me, that's what it is, to be honest with yourself and to be vulnerable enough to be honest with your reading audience. And in my case, in writing workshops, to say this is real, but it takes a certain amount of self-awareness and vulnerability to put yourself out there and say that this is really how I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does because in today's society, also everything's so volatile that we have to be so careful about what we say too. So that makes it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's walking
Yeah,
the tightrope all the time.
I know, right? You're like, oh, I'm hoping I'm not throwing landmines out there. I'm just trying to teach, or whatever it is. Um, so, in The House of the Moon Surviving the 60s, you delve into a transformative era, which it really was. If you could time travel and witness any event from the 60s firsthand, what would it be and why?
Goodness, there are so many events, and I
I
lived through
know.
so many of them. It was a pivotal time. I think I would like to have been at Woodstock. I think it
I
was a
knew you
time.
were going to say I knew you were going to say that. And actually, I knew someone who was there performing live that changed her life. So I'll have to connect you two.
Oh, that would be wonderful. And that was the one thing. I was at so many concerts, I was so many places, but I think I was 17 and living in Los Angeles. I didn't know anybody that owned a car that could even make it halfway to New York. And getting away from my parents, especially my father, for 5, 6, 7 days, I couldn't come up with an excuse, although I was very creative even then. But it that would be the one event, because I think it was a time that exemplified the spirit of the 60s.
Yes, and there were 500,000 people there in one
Exactly.
field in upstate New York, all for peace and listening to music and just wanting to get away from the tumultuousness of what was going on in the 60s for sure. I maybe if I could go back in time, that'd be a really great place to go. We'll go together. So, um,
Yes.
so In your upcoming series, The Magdalene Chronicles explores historical fiction. If you could step into the shoes of any character, this is a good question too, from your series for a day, who would it be and what would you do in their shoes? Ooh, this is a good question.
I would say it would have to be the protagonist, the main woman. It's a first person narrative from the perspective of
Okay.
Mary Magdalene.
Okay.
And I believe that she was an incredibly powerful, self-assured, intelligent, dynamic woman. And to actually walk the streets of Judea, to see the people, the events, it may sound a little masochistic, but to experience the overwhelming oppression of Roman occupation and what it was like to have your every moment watched, and that death was right there, and to find her courage to continue to take one step after the other with that oppressive, and this is not sexist, but male patriarchy order that was new in Judea. Women had many rights at that time, and they were slowly eroded as Rome took over. So I would say it would have to be her.
That would be an incredible experience. I can, yes, I can imagine that would be. So the Last Magdalene is set for release in 2024. Woohoo! We're so close.
Yes.
We're almost there. We're at the finish line for the year. Without giving away spoilers, what's one unexpected twist or element that readers can look forward to in the first book of the Magdalene Chronicles? And I love the title.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and okay, so some twist without giving away.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I think
is that possible?
Yes, I think the twist goes back to why I wrote the book about her, is that she has come down for the last 2,000 years as being this weepy woman who just followed Jesus and was meek and mild. And my depiction of her, as you can see on the cover, she's an incredibly strong, determined woman who had her own relationship to divinity and believed in the same things that Jesus taught, which was love above all, love over will, and being inclusive as opposed to exclusive. So does that fit?
Yes, absolutely. And the cover is really beautiful. And he really did teach that. And she did try to be that example of the things that he was teaching, from what we understand, right?
Exactly. And we have mostly only religious text to go from. So it's slanted towards Jesus' teaching, who he became. But if you read between the lines and you read about that time and how people lived, you understand. I mean, the Magdalene was mentioned more times than any other woman other than his direct family, his mother, and more times than most of the apostles. So, and she was always listed first among his followers. So to me, that means she was a woman of importance and a woman who had her own standing, her own understanding. And I have them as being equal in their beliefs and in their goals.
And I've watched The Chosen. I don't know if you have, but it's just
I have. I
beautiful.
did recently.
Oh gosh, it's just so I'm so emotional after every episode. It's done so well, I believe, and I believe she was, according to that story. In that story, she was the first one that he healed, and then she started to follow him. According to that, to The Chosen. So then that would make sense why she's mentioned more than anyone else, and maybe her struggles were pretty significant that he healed. That was a pretty big deal. How do you
and
see
that
the
is
role
something?
of,
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
That is the twist that I cannot give away because it would be a spoiler. But what were the demons that were cast out? And
Oh,
so in my
yes,
book,
yes, yes.
they're quite different. They come
Yeah,
from,
that
which
was
I know you deal a lot with, personal, physical, and emotional trauma, as opposed to literal demons. But I feel, and I discuss this in House of the Moon also, that we all have our personal demons. And,
mm,
and some people call them ghosts, some people call them emotional trauma, some of them are physical trauma. But it is the ability, again, to be vulnerable enough and feel safe enough to have that part of our internal psyche released.
right, and also skeletons in the closet, that's another one that people use,
Mhm.
for things to get rid of, but I really I've only met one person who I watched her speak. She's a minister, a friend of mine, and she said she had no traumas growing up, like nothing significant enough. The way she lived a life of ministry with her parents. But when I've gone back and looked at her story, there were traumas there because really it's almost impossible for somebody, even like the most, we look at royals or we look at the most rich and famous, they all have traumas because there's abuse somewhere that's happened in there, or there's abandonment, or there's feeling unloved, or whatever it is. There's always something, isn't there?
There is, as we learn from Prince Harry's book, Spare. He has
Oh,
this
yes.
ideal life in that. And it's like, no, to me, no life that is meaningful is ideal. I feel that we
Mm.
grow and expand and learn compassion through the traumas, through the things that don't go quite right. If you look at my cup that I keep drinking from, it says, "A calm sea never made a skilled sailor."
Oh, I like that. Oh, that's but it's true though, right? I mean, how do we learn to
Mhm.
be a good driver if the roads are always safe and everything is fine? We want them to be that way, but we learn how to be
Mhm.
a good defensive driver because whoops, somebody just tried to pull out, or whoops, somebody almost cut me off, or and so it's almost those scary little things that allow us to go out and be a better confident driver in our life, and then to teach our children. Please,
Mhm.
Lord, help all of them out there driving these days.
Yes.
But
I'm looking at my roads here and they're icy right now.
oh, goodness gracious. Oh my,
Winter is
that is
here.
cold. Yeah, winter, the beast is here. So, well, how do you see the role of literature in promoting social change? And have you encountered any successes in integrating activism into your writing?
I do see it as an important part of social change. And yes, when I write about the 60s, it gives people who lived there a new perspective by being, I mean, I'm very authentic, very open, very vulnerable in this book. And people have said, how can you say such personal things about yourself? And I don't come off looking great. I come out, but the times themselves were important when people came together to make positive change in the world. And I would like that message now to go out and to say we are able to turn the situations around. There is so much war and hatred and divisiveness throughout the entire world. And I would like people to read The House of the Moon and also The Last Magdalene and realize that we are all in this struggle together. And if we are not able to unite, then that will be our downfall. And
Mm,
something that I practice and I teach and everything is that you, just a personal, you don't have to be wrong for me to be right. And,
exactly.
and it's
We
like
need
we
billboards
can
everywhere. Yes.
exactly. And if we all just agree to disagree and say, I can see your perspective. It doesn't work for me, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work for you. As long as my mom raised me, and she comes off in the book as being kind and loving, but just as messed up as I was. But she always said, "No harm, no sin."
Mm,
It is your intention, and if you're good to people, then that's the best you can be. So
right.
it goes back to the theme of the 60s that I would like to see come back now when people just get together, just love one another. which goes back to
Yeah,
the teachings of the Last Magdalene. It is love
right.
over will, and your will is to do this, to have power um, to to get your way all the time. That's will. But love is inclusive. Love is the thing that binds the whole world together, in my opinion.
It's beautiful. Yes.
Mhm.
Will is the actions of a 5-year-old not getting their way, or 3-year-old.
Yes. And you know what? If you look at the world right now, I think there are a lot of emotional 3 and 5-year-olds out there.
Oh, yes, they're everywhere. I know. I know some people right now that I'm like, "What do you d why? Why?" Okay.
Why?
So,
Yeah, some names are
yeah,
going through my
why?
mind.
I know, just why? If you had to describe your writing style as a blend of 2 unrelated things, wow, this is a great question, isn't it? What would they
Hmm.
be? And why do you think they would complement each other in your work? We're trying to make you
I would
think
say
this morning.
you are. Excuse me. I would
It's
say
okay.
two unrelated things or opposite things. I would say a um, a firm grasp on reality and the ability to fly with my imagination.
Mm.
Are those opposite enough?
Oh, yes, very, very opposite, and it's like, why how would you even bring those, together? So
Well,
that
and
would
I
be the
feel that
challenge.
yeah, I feel that I have especially well in House of the Moon also because there is the very definite reality of what my life was like. And then that internal spark that kept me going, that helped me to survive, that had me reposition myself in my circumstances and pretend it was otherwise. Imagine something different.
That's a great coping skill. 'Cause I'm a kid I was born in the late '60s, so I know through times that we went through when I was a child, the way I got through was everything's okay, everything's gonna be okay, and that's how I survived, and I find myself
Mhm.
doing it in my adult life, and then
Mhm.
I have passed that on to my children, but more of in a realistic way, because really in the end, whatever ends up happening, um, we're gonna be okay, whatever form that looks like, it just may not feel okay to us at all, you know?
Well, I think it's a matter of whenever you use the analogy of driving, your car starts to skid, and what you want to do is go in the opposite direction, but what you need to do is turn into the skid to straighten everything out. And that's hard to
Right.
do emotionally, but to go to where your fear resides and then move out of that and recognize it, and it could be a very, very real threat. But if you hide from it, you're not going to be able to deal with it. So you go into it and you recognize where you're at, what you need to do, and then you find the skills, whether it's imagination, whether it's thinking positive, or whether it's prayer, whatever it is that allows you to step aside and move beyond the situation in a positive manner, as opposed to just going to anger and violence and all of that. You just say, no, this is for me to, I guess, rise above or
Yeah, and not enough
dive
people are
into.
taught. Right, and not enough people are taught, the whole, resolution and,
Mhm.
regulation of emotions. It's just it should be taught in schools everywhere.
It's going back to being a 5-year-old. I want this.
Mhm.
If I'm not going to get it, I'm going to scream and yell. No, there comes a point in life where you say, this is what I want. If I'm not able to get it, how do I move towards that goal without hurting somebody else?
Yeah.
And sometimes you just can't get what you want. To go back to the Rolling Stones, but you find some time. You
Right.
get what you
Yeah, but
need.
I'm saying that to my 10-year-old, and my girls, I said it
Mhm,
to them, "You can't always get what you want because
mhm.
this generation these generations that we have right now are about, the way I describe it is, I want what I want when I want what I want, and I can't accept no."
Yes.
So this is what we're living with.
And it's difficult because my generation came from a generation that my mother lived through the Depression, and you
Yes.
had nothing, so you were excited if you had a new dress or new pair of shoes that didn't
Anything.
have holes in it. And now
Right.
it's just instant gratification. I want this, I want that, I want that, and it's all made available to us. And so I feel that people are not able to put the emotional and physical energy into working for long-term goals. And if you're a writer, unless you're, well, I write flash fiction also, which is so satisfying to me. I can finish a story in 700 words. And I write tomes that, are 130,000 words. But for writers, it is the long haul. It is something that you dedicate yourself to, and you keep going in the dark times and the light times, and you just realize you're being a bit schizophrenic. Sometimes everything is great, and sometimes everything is just horrible. So, and you just keep going. If that you set your goal and you move towards it.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so in a world where readers could only remember one sentence, from House of the Moon, Surviving the 60s, what would you want that sentence to be? And why does
Oh
it
my goodness.
encapsulate the essence of your memoir? Did you drink enough coffee? I've got my
I
Christmas
don't think
coffee going on.
one line out of House of the Moon. Oh boy. Um,
Great question.
it is. If you give me one out of the Magdalene, I can tell you that one easy. But House of the Moon, there are so many lines. I'm gonna have to think about that one. Can we go with the
Okay.
Last Magdalene? I'll give you that one.
Yes, 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 yes. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
the opening line of the book is, "I have heard tales of my madness."
Mm. That does sum up a lot for her.
It does. And oh, oh, I've got one. It's one
Okay.
line. I have to give it a little backup in. So I was down and out on drugs, just thinking my whole life was gone. And my high school English teacher filled out all of these scholarship applications for me. And I went up to him, and I didn't want to do it. I didn't have belief in myself. And I said, "Do you think I even stand a chance?" And he said, "You have to take a chance to stand a chance." So, words of wisdom
Very,
from Mr. Sundstrand.
very, very, very nice. I love that. What is next for you? Do you have a project in the works?
I do book 2, which is called The Lost and the Holy. And the Last Magdalene goes up through the crucifixion, and Rome was vehement in tracking down people who were related to or followers of someone who they considered an insurrectionist. Um, and so the Magdalene is taken to Alexandria, which was the the traditional place of exile for Judeans.
Okay.
And so that book takes place there, and that's in the process now. And hopefully each book will be released 1 year. Not that I'm an overachiever, but
That's okay.
so
Hey, listen, these books need to be out there, so that's really good. Do you prefer I know I wanna ask you this is one last question because we're out of time and the time goes by so fast. We can't wait to
yes.
have you back on the show. Traditional versus self-publishing.
I I am with a small press, and I think it's the
Mhm.
best of all worlds,
Yeah.
because to be out there alone and doing this, I mean, I have a great PR team with Abundantly Social, and they help me so that I'm able to continue to write. And a small press doesn't have the restrictions that larger publishers do. And I have found that they put their heart and soul into making sure your story is told. So I would go
Yeah.
small press. To me, they're
Mhm.
the groundbreakers right now.
I agree. Yes. Well, listen, we have loved having you on today. It's just it's been an amazing conversation. We have to have you back on. We're going to follow your
Thank you.
journey. And go out and grab Donna's books. And thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next week in another episode of the Writer's Corner live show. So thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Writer's Corner live show. 30 minutes of insightful author conversations with some of the biggest names in the industry, including award-winning authors and international indie sensations. Join us on the next episode of the Writer's Corner live show.